In this video, I'm going to do a quick unboxing of the brand new Nothing Ear 3 and give my audiophile sound quality impressions and do some quick sound comparisons versus the equally brand new AirPods Pro 3rd generation, which I did a first impressions video in my last video. So let's start with the unboxing. And so here we have the nice little package. And so I'm just going to open this here. Okay, not as clean as I would have liked. So I'm just gonna pull this out. All right, cool. And this is the Nothing X app, which I believe I have the same app for the Nothing Headphone 1, which I've also reviewed here on the channel. And I have a custom EQ setting for this headphone as well to get the most sound quality out of them. So basically peel this off, and then we have a really nice case here. So it's this see-through plastic case, and basically it looks like we have some kind of, very similar kind of metallic paint on the exterior here. So it looks pretty cool. We can see the earbuds are in here. I'm curious about the ear tips as well. That's probably included. So let me just show you what's included in the rest of the package. So if I just pull everything out here, and I think this is probably just a manual and for the app to download that on your phone. So we have 4 ear tips if you include the default, which is going to be the medium size. We have extra small, small, and large. On the AirPods Pro 3, we actually have a total of 5 ear tips because there's an extra small, I believe, is the additional one. So this is just a box. Just going to put that aside. We have a small USB-C to USB-C. I believe this is probably a charging cable. And so yeah, that's pretty much the quick unboxing. And as I shared in my last video with the Pro 3, make sure you test out all of these. Probably inside the app they have a fit test to see if you get a good enough seal. That's a really important thing with all of these earbuds that I've tested. And so basically, let's see if we can open this up. So we got this case here, and it's a magnet, which is really cool. And yeah, it looks really cool. Nothing has really interesting designs, very unique, as with the Nothing Headphone 1. So if I pop out the earbuds real quick, and basically if we look at them, I mean, in some ways they are very reminiscent of the AirPods Pro series, which we have here, the Pro 3, which has been redesigned. So if I just do some very initial impressions of sort of the fit, I see that the earbud seems to be a little bit rounder, maybe a little more bulbous, if you will, and then the angle of the ear tip itself is not as pronounced as on the Pro 3, which the Pro 3 has a really great fit. So I'm going to put these on real quick, just give a quick fit impression, and then we're going to go into the sound impressions very soon. All right, cool. So I know this is very early, but my initial impression is very strong of the fit of the Nothing Ear 3. They seem to fit like a glove, and they seem to just fit really easily. Even with the medium ear tips, I usually use smaller ear tips to get a good seal inside of the ear canal, but for me it seems like the medium created a seal very easily, and also they felt fairly comfortable, very similar to the AirPods Pro 3 in terms of the fit on these is very form fitted to the actual shape of the ear canal versus older earbuds that they just sometimes they'd be pressing against areas of your ear and not really fit like a glove. So it's very positive so far, but obviously I need to spend more time before I can comment on, the long-term usage of these. But overall, the design, it is somewhat similar in terms of shape to the AirPods Pro 3, but then obviously you have kind of that see-through, almost like retro design of the Nothing that I do love. It's pretty cool on the Nothing Headphone 1. So without further ado, let's jump into the sound impressions. I'm going to spend a couple hours, just like I did with the AirPods Pro 3, give you my honest, raw thoughts, good or bad, as I do with all my videos. And, we're going to see how good do these stack up to the AirPods Pro 3. Maybe I'll reference some of the dozen or so wireless earbuds that I've also tested in this class. So stay tuned and let's dive in next. All right, so I've just spent the last few hours testing the Nothing Ear 3, running it through as many genres as possible, my usual battery of tests and songs that I listen to. So I'm going to share my listening impressions, and most notably, I'm going to be comparing it to the AirPods Pro 3. I might reference the Nothing Headphone 1 as well. So very quickly, I want to talk about the fit of the earbuds. I found these to be pretty comfy, very easy to get a proper seal, and it doesn't seem to go as deep into the ear canal as the AirPods Pro 3. To me, the fit of the Nothing Ear 3 is something like between the AirPods Pro and the AirPods regular line. Now, I did notice how the shape of the earbud on the Nothing Ear 3 is a little rounder. It's a little more bulbous, and I feel like this presses on parts of the ear outside of the ear canal a little more. So I think for longer listening sessions, that might get a little bit annoying. But I also feel like this larger earbud does help it to feel more secure as well. And one more feature I want to point out that I didn't know, because I went into this first impressions completely blind, is that there is a super mic on the case of the Nothing Ear 3, which I think is very innovative, because honestly, at the end of the day, the microphones are very limited on these earbuds because they're so far away from your actual mouth that it's pretty hard to get good audio quality compared to an actual mic that is much closer to your mouth and can be dedicated towards microphone quality. So I have yet to test this. I will do it for the full review, but I find that very innovative that they actually decided to put the better quality mic on the case, something similar to wireless microphones for videography like Rode or DJI. All right, so let's get into the sound quality. I'm just going to jump right into it. And for those who don't know, we buy every single product that we review on the website and on this YouTube channel. So this is unsponsored, it's unpaid. I did not receive a free copy of the Nothing Ear 3. I paid full price just like I did with the AirPods Pro 3. So I'm going to be as honest as possible. Actually, let me quickly mention the noise canceling. So I spent the last 3 hours listening to these back to back with the Pro 3. I find that the Pro 3 has the superior noise canceling. I don't think that the noise canceling is bad. It's probably pretty decent on the Nothing Ear 3, but it just didn't seem to be as effective at blocking all of the frequencies that the AirPods Pro 3 can. I think part of it can be due to the ear tip design of the Pro 3, that it gets a little bit deeper into that ear canal, building a better physical seal, but I also think that the noise canceling filtering is stronger and more effective on the Pro 3. So anyways, let's jump into the tuning and the sound profile of the Nothing Ear 3. This stock tuning reminds me of the Nothing Headphone 1, and unfortunately that's in a bad way, because I think that this stock tuning, which to me is somewhat neutral. So overall, I would describe the sound of the Nothing Ear 3 as being a little duller and more neutral / boring compared to the AirPods Pro 3, which is very consumer friendly, very bass and treble forward, and exciting and lively. I gotta be honest, listening back to back with these earbuds, I immediately notice a higher resolution and clarity. So listening back to back with the AirPods Pro 3 versus the Nothing Ear 3, I have to be honest, the Ear 3 to me just sounds cheaper than the Pro 3 overall. And the first thing is just the sense of resolution and clarity and higher fidelity of the AirPods Pro 3. It just seems like things can breathe a little bit more, and I'm just hearing more detail, especially in the treble. There's something duller and a little more boring, and it's lacking airiness in the Nothing Ear 3. I think that the boxy and distant vocals is something to point out that's very similar to the stock tuning on the Nothing Headphone 1. And with the Pro 3 of the AirPods, the vocals are a lot more forward, which I personally find to be my preference, whereas the vocals can be quite boxy sounding and just not that flattering, to be honest, on the Nothing Ear 3. So the way that this sound profile can be perceived is probably a little bit muddy, maybe a little overly bassy, and just not cohesive and detailed. In my opinion, I believe that the Nothing Ear 3 will need EQ to be as enjoyable for audiophiles, more so than the AirPods Pro 3 right out of the box. Now, luckily, just like the Nothing Headphone 1, we have one of the most advanced EQs inside of the Nothing X app, so that's something I'm very excited to tinker around with. But I have to be honest, I feel that the hardware is limited and probably cheaper on the Nothing Ear 3. I'm just not getting that sense of resolution and detail that I could hear even with the stock tuning not being optimal on the Headphone 1. I could at least hear the potential with those drivers that were co-developed by Kef. With the Ear 3 on the other hand, I think that we are dealing with a cheaper product here, cheaper from a hardware perspective, so I think it is going to be hardware limited as its ceiling, but I still reserve my full final judgment until I get time to tinker around with the EQ, but I'm a little bit skeptical, to be honest. Now, let's talk about the positives. So there is a massive bass response on the Nothing Ear 3. It's very strong. It might be a little overly prominent for some listeners. It seems to be on par with the Pro 3, perhaps having more quantity, but when listening back to back, I have to say that the Pro 3's bass is tighter and more controlled. So it may not have as much bass quantity as the Nothing, especially once you turn on the bass enhancement. But I think the tighter, more focused bass of the Pro 3 is just a better bass quality over quantity. And in addition to that, I do prefer the treble detail and the airiness and the soundstage of the AirPods Pro 3, which to me is just more audiophile as a whole, where the Ear 3, combining that sound profile with that lower sense of resolution and fidelity, to my ear, it just sounds like the cheaper earbud. Now, let's talk about different genres, okay? We're gonna break down what genres is the Ear 3 good for, where does it excel, where is it subpar. So starting with pop and hip hop, I think this is fine due to that huge bass response, but the treble is lacking that excitement and the detail that the AirPods Pro 3 has. I prefer hip hop with male vocals better than female vocal pop for the Ear 3, but I still find those vocals to be a little bit boxy. Now, moving on to EDM, I think that this is solid due to having that really strong bass response, and the synths sound fairly detailed, but they could be a little fuller. I found country to be just fine. It was nothing special, nothing exciting. Now, one of the strengths that I find with the Ear 3 is rock and metal, okay? So I found this to be better than the AirPods Pro 3, which has those scooped out mids and has a tinniness. So I'm hearing guitars and male vocals are a little fuller with the Ear 3. Drums are more balanced. Hi-hats had this unnatural emphasis on the AirPods Pro 3. They really jump out in a way that just isn't realistic. And I think that does speak to the AirPods Pro 3 having a little bit peakiness and pushing forward a lot of airiness and that treble to get more detail and excitement. And then lastly, I found classical and jazz to be surprisingly great on the Ear 3. There was some decent timbre for some instruments. It was off for some others, to be honest, so it wasn't perfect. But there was a good amount of detail for all of these instruments. And I really don't have much complaints about classical or jazz listening through these. All right, so overall, the Nothing Ear 3 to me, it doesn't sound bad, but at the same time, I don't think it sounds anything exceptional or excellent that I haven't really heard from some of these other models like the Technics AZ100, which is really excellent. I wouldn't put it above the AZ100 or in the same league as the Technics or the Bowers & Wilkins PI8, whereas I do think the AirPods Pro 3 does compete with these or starts to get close to that high-end level of sound quality for the wireless earbud category. Another one is the Cambridge Audio M100, another excellent value choice for earbuds that I just think is more enjoyable than the Nothing Ear 3. But this is just my initial impressions. I spent a few hours with it, running through all the different genres I could with the same songs I used to test. And overall, these are just my honest first impressions, and these things can improve as we get to tinker with that super advanced EQ inside of the Nothing app. If you found this video useful, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment below letting me know if you have any questions about the Nothing Ear 3, the AirPods Pro 3, or any of the earbuds or headphones that we have on the website or upcoming and being released soon, or any headphones or other products that are hitting the market right now. In my next videos, I'm going to be doing direct head-to-head comparisons with the Nothing Ear 3, including a full review, a comparison against the AirPods Pro 3. So I encourage you to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and make sure to check out recordingnow.com, where you will find my full reviews, head-to-head comparisons, and EQ settings for most of the headphones, including the Nothing Headphone 1. And lastly, if you want to keep watching and doing research for your next wireless headphone or earbud purchase, I'm going to link a relevant video and playlist right here so you can make a more informed purchase decision. Take it easy and happy listening.